everybody, welcome back to the channel. I'm here again with Pastor Brian, and we're going to talk about episodes 4 and 5 of Rings of Power. And we're doing that because neither of us really had a lot to say about episode 4, I don't think. So we thought, well, let's tack 5 on there because I think we have much more to say about that. So yes. Episode 4, Brian, overall thoughts?
I mean, it was interesting for me. I mean, I was following it and I watched it. I think there was maybe a little more stuff that like I have to ask you to kind of understand. So for those of us that are not experts on the books, or I've only read the Lord of the Rings trilogy. I haven't read like the Silmarillion or anything. So but yeah, I enjoyed it. It just didn't seem to move as much stuff, and boy, it got going in episode 5, and episode 5 I guess to say probably blocked out a lot of 4 because episode 5 ended and I wanted to see 6. Which yeah, right, yeah,
there were basically 2 things about episode 4 that were cool. We saw Tom Bombadil and we saw an Entwife, because of course by the time that everybody meets Ents in Lord of the Rings, there have been no Entwives around for thousands of years, and here we have an Entwife. So this is pre the Ents losing all the female Ents. So that was kind of cool. So those are the 2 things that kind of stood out. Also, we did get actual distance at the very beginning of episode 4. I can't remember. I think it might be Elrond who reveals that it's 150 leagues between the Grey Havens and Eregion. So I'm not, but league, there are several different leagues of different lengths. I have no idea how long Elrond considers a league to be. That's been a problem for historians in the real world too. When I was doing research on the DeSoto who went around the southeastern United States, and the Gentleman of Ilvas wrote there, what happened to them over the course of those years. He used the word league, but he didn't specify which one. At the time, Spain had 3 official distances that were considered leagues. So if you don't specify, then either he wandered around like Georgia and Mississippi, or he could have been all the way to Texas and Kansas. I mean, it depends on which league you use, right? So here I don't really know what Elrond means by a league, but at least he gives us a number. And we realize it's going to take a long time to get there, so it must be quite a ways. But also we figure that by the next episode, apparently there are 0 leagues in between Celebrimbor and Khazad-dûm, because they just go back and forth like it's a half an hour walk or something, So they don't seem to have any time at all. Durin just goes and visits Celebrimbor, and then by the next day he seems to be home again. You're like, oh, you can just jog over there in a few minutes, say, hey, Celebrimbor, let's have a meeting, and then go right back home. So apparently those places are really close. But
I'm usually into units of measure, but I have to say I have no vision in my mind of what a league is. 20,000 leagues under the sea, Captain Nemo?
Yeah, Captain Nemo.
That's the only reference I even have. I'll have to figure out what a league is. I have no sense, yeah.
Well, and we have no idea. It could be anywhere. It could be several miles. It could be a few hundred feet. We don't know. Are they really wandering around just Florida and Georgia, or are they around the entire North American continent? We don't know. But then we do get to some interesting parts. We get to Tom Bombadil. I thought he was well done. I believe you agree on that one.
Yeah, he annoyed me for a minute, but then I found him pretty fun to watch. I like it. It's almost transcendental in his not caring about being consistent or making sense or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, he's been an enigmatic character from get-go, and apparently, I'm pretty sure in one of Tolkien's letters he sent about how you couldn't have Middle Earth without Tom Bombadil. He's absolutely essential, and you're like, I don't get that, But then he wouldn't explain, so it's just this sort of a mystery that the author didn't want to tell you about. If he knew the answer, he never let it out. So Tom Bombadil is just some weird enigma, but apparently to Tolkien he was extremely important. So I mean, here you guys wander around just seeing what's thing. Oh, this used to be all green. Now it's a desert. Even the bird song's different, And so I just had to come see it for myself. So, he does just sort of wander around and just look at stuff. Apparently, So
I like that characterization. Yeah, I like that characterization and that performance then, because if you're this ancient important character, but to kind of play it like kind of flighty and light. So I think that's why I enjoyed it a lot. Yeah.
Well, I think that really captures what he does in Fellowship of the Ring. He's obviously very powerful. the ring has no power over him,
Yeah.
and he, not only does it not work on him, but when Frodo puts it on, he can see Frodo when no one else can, right? So it has no effect on him whatsoever. He's able to control the Barrow Wights, and he, can control Van Willow. Yeah. So he seems to have a lot of control over his surroundings. He kind of can do anything. At the same time, he doesn't choose to do much either. So he knows about the world, but he's not really involved in the world. At the Council of Elrond, they suggest, why don't we just give Tom Bombadil the ring since it can't affect him? And, Elrond's like, yeah, but he's all by himself and he's an ancient power. But, and also he's just forgetful. He'll forget where he put it, or it'll just get away from him. I mean, he won't see the importance behind it, and won't pay that much attention. So like he sees all, but he doesn't like prioritize all certain things, I guess, the way everybody else wants to prioritize. So, he's got his interests, which seem to include seeing the first acorn and stuff, but actually like enough to be in the world to affect events.
So almost like a prime mover who lost interest or something,
Yeah. Well, some people suspect he is God, but who knows? Sintoka wouldn't say. There have been many theories on what Tom Bombadil really is, especially since he says, "I was here before." So it's like, was he just like sung into being by the Valar at the beginning? He like in some sense is Mother Nature, in this form or something. Because Goldberry is clearly also some kind of nature goddess, But
yeah,
I don't know. No one's ever going to know who Tom Bombadil really is. So, but it is cool. The portrayal was nice. Confusion for the poor stranger. Is it my job to face the fire or to face Sauron? And well, it's your job to do both. Thanks, Tom.
A cool message. Just you got to figure out who you are and do your thing. I mean, I like that message.
Mm-hmm. All right. So, and then the Entwives. So, turns out that Theo was taken by some Ents who were mad at the destruction of a forest. Okay, and so the Ents were cool. That there's an Entwife there was also cool. But ultimately, I mean, they're wandering off now, so I don't know that we'll see Ents again. So it's nice to see them, but whether or not they really affect anything in the long term.
Another cool thing too, because again, they're so well in Lord of the Rings. They're so ancient, right? But they have that gravitas, right? Like in the Rings trilogy. So it was very cool for me to see them. I remember at first when I think in the book, where is it the second book, and there's like a million pages where there's just talking. I didn't understand what was going on, and I absolutely hated it. But then, like once I knew who they were and understood what was going on, that was one of my favorite parts of reading that in that trilogy. Yeah.
Yeah, it's much shorter than you think. When I was a teenager and I was reading this book many times over and over, I would often skip the Ent chapters, but there's only like 2 of them. I mean, they don't really take up that much space in the book, but it feels like they do.
Yeah, yep.
They do speak slowly. Everything kind of slows down for them in telling the story and everything, and it does seem to drag until maybe you just understand a bit more about what's going on, and it's like, oh, yeah. Okay, and that comes more. So when I was actually teaching it in a class, those chapters seemed much more exciting to me then, but it was also 30 years later, and I read it a bunch of times. And, so
yeah, I've taught a lot of things that I hated when I read it, and sometimes I hated teaching it too. But
well, I liked it better later. But so that was cool, but that was about it for this. I mean, we had some stuff with the humans. We had some stuff with Galadriel and Elrond having their little spat. It didn't interest me that much, though.
Yeah.
So let's move on to episode 5, because that one was much cooler. We go to see Numenor. We see the dwarves again. Cool. Love dwarves. Love Disa, of course. And Celebrimbor shows a little flash of insight here. Just a little one. It doesn't last for a really long time. But as said, the Celebrimbor Anatar scenes, I think, have been the best, really, this season. And here, he literally, I guess Sauron trips himself up a little bit. He's a little too obvious on how he's trying to manipulate Celebrimbor, and then Celebrimbor is like, so this is how you work? You say something and get other people to think it was their idea,
Yeah.
And Yeah.
I was like, yes, thank you. Finally, somebody. This is what
Yeah.
Sauron does. Pay attention.
But then he kind of lets that go. You know, like, oh, come on,
Yeah.
Caleb. You were almost there. You're so close. You were almost
Yeah. Well, I wasn't sure if he just felt trapped and is biding his time, or the way they played it, I couldn't quite get his inner monologue about how he was. Is he going along but trying to look for an out, or is he back in the path? And I don't know. That I wasn't sure.
You know, to see how, because now Anatar is working on Medania with the female elf Smith, trying to get her, I guess, to betray Celebrimbor by pretending to be concerned about how the dwarf forging the dwarf rings has obviously affected him. You know, we need to keep an eye on him, kind of stuff. So doing the pretend to concern, right? Being like some sort of concerned older uncle. And of course, she believes he's from Valinor. So, I mean, why wouldn't she listen to him, right? She thinks he's some sort of messenger of Manwë or something, maybe Owlay. And, no, he's not. Only by the Vegas sense, and the fact that Sauron was a servant of Owlay at some point in the past, but hasn't been for a very long time. So, yeah. So working on her made some sense, and their scenes together, the fact that they're not really always in agreement anymore was cool. And Sauron now trying to be maybe a little less obvious on how I'm trying to manipulate Celebrimbor, because he could start to catch on. Not quite as stupid as I thought he was,
Yeah.
So.
And the way he turned it on Celebrimbor, again, made me mad. But that is also very real. That narcissists gaslight all the time, very much like that. That was a very gaslighting moment. I thought, yeah.
Well, and he does something that I saw a review of this episode where this person was like, it must have been really hard for Sauron to do this. And it's like, well, that's an interesting take, because then Sauron's like, well, yeah, men can be easily controlled, but think of the men who overcame like evil and did all these wonderful things. And he's like, Barahir and Tuor and Beren. And, Beren, like, and Luthien, they like humiliated Sauron a bunch of times. And they humiliated Morgoth, and it's just like, and he's going, oh, Beren was like so great, and it's just like, how can Sauron even like act that well? You should be saying like, oh, Beren, my deepest, horrible enemy who like did me the most damage in the past. I just hate him to pieces. But no, he's like, oh, just remember all these great humans who did great things, and sticks him on the list there. And so it was like, okay, Sauron, good job.
Yeah. That's where you cross from narcissist into sociopath.
I use my own pain.
Next, we'll have a serial killer, which of course Sauron is.
Yeah. So, although I think now we get the Barrow-wights too, which is interesting.
Oh, that's cool.
So the non-interesting threat of Galadriel and Elrond being kind of at odds over this trip to Rhuidean. But then they meet the Barrow-wights, which of course the hobbits also meet in Fellowship of the Ring. So, here they are thousands of years before Lord of the Rings takes place. And there's still Barrow-wights there. Something that was just cool to see, and the way they were depicted, these little glowing green eyes and stuff. So that was cool.
Yeah, because like you mentioned, I mean, I get so tired of like, but the ring says, but we're not listening to the ring. But the ring says, but we're not listening to the ring, right? So that was a nice little shut them both the hell up, Mm-hmm. Although I felt bad for that first elf that got yanked into the cave.
Yeah, and I did see an article on how what we see in episode 5 is the characters of color are the ones that are getting sacrificed first. So the black elf gets taken down, and then Elendil's kind of like adoptive son, sort of. He's clearly at least a brown person, not a black person. He's the one who gets knifed in the back,
Just like in 80s slasher flicks, That's always
black people are going to die first, right?
Yeah. The informed internal racism that we don't even realize that comes out in our entertainment. Yeah.
Yeah. So Valandil was a big loss. So when we go to Numenor, though, we see some interesting scenes. So the interest in Numenor is picking up a little here, and we get. I don't understand the order, I guess, of what Muriel does, but she she asks Elendil, like, what did you see when you touched the Palantir? And he says, well, I saw my son and he was lost and whatever. And she's like, oh, you didn't see it. He's like, what do you mean? He's like, and she's like, well, my father and I, for years, every time we touch the stone, we see Numenor's downfall. But you see something different. So maybe that we can avoid that. So now she's really that. Part of the reason she didn't fight Pharazôn for the throne is she's trusting. She says this is what it means to have faith. She's trusting as she steps back and doesn't, take her birthright. And somehow that means Numenor will survive. When if she's queen, she's going to do something to cause the end of Numenor. But really, it's more the other way around. The fact that she gives up, when Pharazôn takes control and is very evil, that's what brings about the downfall of Numenor. So she's in exactly the wrong thing, but perhaps for the right reason. She wants to save Numenor, and she feels that, okay, if I just back off and I don't press my claim, Numenor might be saved. So, I mean, she has noble ambitions.
That was a terrifying scene. And they showed that scene very often at that very moment last season. And so that does make sense, I guess, to me now that you say it, because it's like, so when I knew I was about to inherit this kingdom, and then that's what I was going to stand on that thing and have these waves come at me. If that can be changed by me not being the ruler, so that I guess does make a little sense. Yeah.
It just doesn't make sense to me that she does at her coronation before she finds out what Elendil saw when he looked into Palantir. So I'm not sure why she was so passive then, but I do seem to think I understand why she's being passive now. At least that was
And it's heartbreaking to have him be passive, because I really wanted him to just take those soldier support and, take over.
That's right. Because we all hate Pharazôn and his little Weasley son, who stabbed.
Oh, that little weasel! Oh
back.
my god! Yeah. Oh god!
Stabbing people in the back, man. That's surely not the Numenorian way.
Well, it shall be now.
Yeah. So Pharazôn's obviously got a lock on power. He's got Iarian's support. So, now there's a break between her and her father. She's mad that her brother's dead. And it's like, I'm not sure I see the connection between my brother died, I need to betray the queen, and my father.
Yeah.
I mean.
I like when she tries to excuse, what's his name? Valandil?
Valandil.
And because that's my boy, heartbreakingly, and he basically tells her to go kick rocks. So that was great. I liked that moment.
Yeah,
it was cool. They're saying the King's men. So that made it clear right away, right? Like very clear faction that's organized, and These
are the ones loyal to Pharazôn. So we're friends. Maybe I can get you off the hook. And I think you've already chosen your friends. So great
good
for
line.
him.
Great.
But unfortunately, then he gets sacrificed to the script. So the script gods. So it was sad to see him go, but we get those lovely scenes of Celebrimbor, and then we see the effect of the ring on Durin. Right. So now he doesn't need a stone singer anymore. The mountain just tells him directly, if you want light, dig here. Right. So if you want gold, dig there. So he is now like stone singer / king in a sense. He's taken their jobs because the ring is showing him stuff, which makes Disa very worried.
Sure.
And then she buys this stone, looking very Palantirish, but a tuning stone, whatever that really means, and it rolls away from her conveniently to a place where she's gonna kind of hear the Balrog moving around in the darkness. So we have another little foreshadowing of there's something down in the basement.
Well, and it was funny because, of course, we know that Balrog's down there. And so, I was following it with interest. But then when she sings out, that was like the perfect thing to have her do, because that moment was really cool. She does that sing out, and then the Balrog splashes up at her, and it freaked her out. Yeah.
Yep. So, that was a great scene. So the dwarf stuff was pretty cool. But then we find out when she's buying that stone, right, that it's gone up in price a lot, apparently. And the merchant says for every coin he takes, he has to charge a coin in tax. So there's 100% tax on everything, apparently, if I understood that line correctly. And
Yeah.
it has to get paid directly to Durin, and he's calling it the ring tribute. So he's raised prices. He's doubled prices because you have to pay him, and then half of that, whatever you pay him, everybody, the merchants, has to go straight to the king. So he's certainly collecting a lot of money now, and he's going to give the other 6 rings to the other 6 dwarf lords in return for their tribute too. Then he wants ring tribute for the rings. So he's finding
In
lots
the
of
Rings
creative
trilogy,
ways.
in the Rings trilogy, when they go through there, are there's tons of gold or something, isn't there? Or jewels or something? Is that, am I
No.
misremembering that a different place or something?
I don't recall them seeing any jewels or gold.
Okay, maybe.
Because I do.
I was just wondering because what's really interesting about that to me is that it makes sense to like have this big tax, I guess, when you can't get the light, right? But with the light, like the economy goes back to working for them. So like a really severe tax like that literally is pure greed. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, well, he's probably getting quite greedy. So that sends Durin the Fourth out to talk to Celebrimbor. What did you do to the rings? The dwarf rings aren't working like the elf rings are. You know, my dad's turning this like greedy little monster. I've never seen him like this before. And Celebrimbor is like, well, it tells Anatar, well, what did we do? Did you do something? You know, and Anatar is like, we did something. You lied to your boss.
Yeah, that was the gaslighting moment there that drove me crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and of course, Celebrimbor was like, well, no, I didn't. What? Oh, no, I didn't really lie, right? So yeah, Celebrimbor was caught there with his own narcissism because he was like, "This is my time. No one best in the third episode.
That's right.
No one's going to keep me from doing this great work that I need. So when I buy myself the space and time to complete my big project." I know
Are the elf rings different from the dwarf rings in that way? That Sauron was less involved in the making of them, or
he was not involved at all in the making of
yeah,
them.
yeah.
So yeah, when the elves put them on, they do whatever they do, but when Sauron forges the One Ring and puts it on, they're instantly aware of his thoughts, and so they remove their rings. So as long as Sauron's wearing the One Ring, he could at least know what they're thinking. If he couldn't control them by their actions, he could at least read their minds. So the rings are kept off their fingers until the One Ring's cut from Sauron's hand. Once it's no longer in his power, they can wear their rings again. So
they're uncorrupt otherwise. Those
right,
rings,
he can like access their minds through the rings, but he can't control the rings. Exactly. Okay. So yeah, because he did not have anything. Celebrimbor made those when Sauron wasn't even around.
Yeah.
So that he had nothing to do with them. But the other rings, he was there to help with the forging of them, and so they do come under his influence. Although the dwarves do resist him, he doesn't really get what he wants out of them. We were told in Fellowship of the Ring during the Council of Elrond that when Glóin is telling the story of how he got to be at the council to explain what's going on at the Lonely Mountain, that a messenger from Sauron comes and it's like, well, I've got 4 of the dwarf rings. I can exchange them to you in return for your loyalty to Sauron. And they tell him, to kick rocks. And so clearly the rings are, I think, important to the dwarves, but they're also, they know they have an idea of the price you have to pay to keep them. So they're willing to say, you know what, just have them. At that point, I think it's Elrond or somebody says like the other 3 were lost to like dragon fire or something. Like, apparently when dragons breathe fire, it's hot enough to melt a magic elvish ring. So even something like the grandson of Fëanor made. So 3 of them, at least 3 of them are destroyed. Sauron had 4, which I presume were also destroyed when he was destroyed. Just like the 9 rings were destroyed when he was destroyed. So.
And are there 9 ring wraiths eventually? Is that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay.
So yeah, we see what people are thinking is even though in the book we don't know who those 9 are, and that's part of the point because when you become a servant of Sauron, you lose your free will, you lose your personal name, you lose everything that makes you a human being or an elf or a dwarf or whatever. So you just become this sort of empty shell, and so who knows who they were in real life because they don't have names anymore. But it looks like we're setting up like Pharazôn or his son possibly to end up being one of those, ring wraiths because now we've seen someone we really hate and who is just, egotistical enough to put on one of those rings, thinking I'm going to be king of all mankind or something. I've got this magic ring, and then turns out that the price for putting the ring on is very high.
Yeah. Yeah, that son. Oof.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So Pharaoh's and his son are real losers there. I guess I could call them weasels, and I would insult weasels, right? So
Yes, you
find some
would.
find some other word. So actually the Numenorian scenes did kind of like become more interesting. We're seeing now this divide between people loyal to the queen and people loyal to the king.
Yeah.
And the what it's costing the people.
Yeah.
So we've now had their main shrine shut down, their relic destroyed. Valindiel gets knifed in the back. Elendil's no longer captain of the Sea Guard. We're seeing the consequences of letting Pharazôn take control.
I love ritual stuff, so that was kind of cool to get to see, how that ritual works. I don't know if that appears in any book, but it was cool to watch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's nice that, of course, it involves the sea, and that's great. You think Numenorians would obviously have sea-based rituals,
That's right.
They are a seafaring people. It's their whole thing is they get on ships and they go around the world and stuff. Of course, at this point, the world's not a globe, so they go across the earth, I guess. What do you care what it's doing? Your world is flat. I don't know. So that's kind of.
It isn't flat now.
No, it's flat now. Yeah. No. At least in the book, it doesn't turn into a globe until the end of the Second Age. When Amon gets removed, you can only go to Amon via a straight road, but all roads are now bent that you can actually access with a human ship. So I think we've covered most of the big cool things in episode 5. The Anatari Celebrimbor scenes, the dwarves, and even Numenor was right up with being really interesting. So I am looking forward to tomorrow tuning on episode 6. And
we didn't explicitly mention the best moment, though.
Oh, okay.
What's the very last moment? Yeah, when Adar lets Galadriel out and then tries to make an alliance with her, and it may not be such a bad idea to do an alliance, and so that was a really cool moment, and that was what has me with bated breath for the next episode.
Yeah, and he speaks Quenya to her, right? The original language of the elves, Quenya, and star shines in the hour of our meeting, and he uses her Quenya name, Alatariel, instead of the Sindarin version, Galadriel. So he is one of those ancient elves that is one of the first elves. And I didn't mention why. I'll start to get on my way here, so you can see this behind me. I took this desktop image down from somewhere online, looking up Rings of Power background images. But what we got here is the tower on Numenor, from which you can see the glow from the Tower of Ecbelion on Tol Eressëa, which isn't Valinor, but it's like the island in between Valinor and Numenor, and sort of like the edge of this like holy territory or whatever. So from Numenor, you can just spot the edge of this blessed realm, and it glows with this lovely, sacred, holy, glow. And,
Aurora.
So you see someone in this little tower. The king, I think, is the only one allowed to go up there, and you can just look and see. It's just out of your reach because they're not, allowed to sail west from Numenor, just far enough, I think, to get out, from beyond the coast and where it's safe to sail and deep enough for your ship, but not any farther west than that. So, you can see this, but you can't touch it. Look but don't touch, and that does drive the Numenorians crazy after some centuries. So we have now Pharazôn, who's just angry. Thought a scepter was going to be enough. Yeah, but going up that tower and looking out and just seeing that glow from the blessed realm and knowing he can never be permitted to go there just really gets his goat.
Almost like a tree of knowledge of good and evil, right?
Yeah.
Like the two.
You'd think that the Iluvatar would get wise after a while that showing people what they can't have isn't a good idea.
It's such a shame to see the Numenorians just become like this, because it's just such a beautiful the buildings and just this water. I guess the Cancer astrological child, moon child in me, loves the water island sculptures, all that stuff, and it's just they're so disappointing, and we know it's only going to get worse, so it's rough.
Yeah, they're gonna sink pretty far. But Elendil and his family and the others who are still loyal will escape and get over to Myrtle Earth and help beat up Sauron. So,
Yeah.
All right. So, looking forward to seeing episode 6 tomorrow. If you want to agree or disagree with anything we said, certainly leave us a comment. Brian, any last thoughts?
No, like I said, I really, I don't know why I'm such a huge Galadriel fan, but it was just cool to end with Galadriel back in the picture, and I liked Adar last season a lot, and we're seeing a lot more. I mean, we're just now starting to see more, so I'm excited to see what happens in the next episode for sure. Because I have a sense they're coming to Aragon, Agorian, Eregion. Thank you. I must say Aragorn. Of course I do. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Thanks.
All right. But we'll see you for our next episode too. Remember to hit like and subscribe. We'll see you then. Bye bye.
Bye bye.